Welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast, hosted by divorce financial analyst and retirement planning counselor Andrew Hatherley. Join Andrew and guest experts as they help late-life divorcees build the financial and mental foundation for a meaningful future. There is life after divorce. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 59 of the Great Divorce Podcast. What can a small town called Ogimi on the north end of Okinawa in Japan teach us about living a happy life after gray divorce? What can a mountain village in Sardinia teach us about staying fit? And what can the residents of Costa Rica's Nicoya Peninsula teach us about finding purpose in our lives? Well, each of these specific areas of the world are identified as blue zones. Blue zones is a term coined by Dan Buettner, a National Geographic explorer and author. I first came across this idea of blue zones from watching the Netflix series called Live to 100: Secrets of the Blue Zones. Buettner and his team of scientists and demographers identified these five places on Earth that stood out for the extraordinary longevity and vitality of their residents. So if you're going through divorce in your 60s or 70s, and you're looking to reset your life and make the most of the time you have left on this earth, wouldn't it be nice to be able to live for another 30 years or so with a healthy body, a sense of purpose, and an overall feeling of contentment? I certainly think so. So maybe we can learn something from these blue zones. But before I get into that, let me just take 30 seconds for a quick request. I'm not going to try and sell you anything or make any charitable appeals. Well, maybe a small charitable appeal. I'd be very grateful if you could give this podcast 5 stars on whatever app you're listening to it on. The more reviews we get, the better we can get the word out on how to get through mid to late life divorce and thrive afterward. Okay, speaking of thriving, let's get back to the blue zones. The TV series Live to 100: Secrets of the Blue Zones went to 5 areas of the world. Those areas are, number 1, Okinawa, Japan, which is known for its large population of centenarians, people over 100 years of age, and those peoples having a strong sense of purpose, or Ikigai. If that term sounds familiar, you might remember episode 29 of the Great Divorce Podcast, in which I went into some depth about this concept of Ikigai. Well, we'll get back to that in a minute. The other blue zone locations are Sardinia, Italy, the Barbagia region in particular, a mountainous area where shepherds often live past 100 due to active lifestyles and strong familial bonds. A third area, the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. Residents have a plan de vida, or a reason to live, and consume a nutrient-rich plant-based diet. Ikigai, Greece, which is known as the island where people forget to die. It's an interesting name or idea. It has a low rate of chronic diseases and dementia. And fifth, last but not least, a place here in US of A, Loma Linda, California, which is a community or home to a community of Seventh-day Adventists who emphasize health, community, and spiritual practice. In a minute, I'd like to focus on that one particular community in Japan, but let's summarize the key insights that the Blue Zone research offers into lifestyle habits and cultural practices that contribute to longevity and well-being. And these lessons can be summarized into what Buettner refers to in his work on blue zones as the Power 9 principles, which are identified on the bluezones.com website. These are a set of common traits observed across these 5 regions. And these Power 9 principles are: 1, to move naturally. The world's longest lived people don't spend a lot of time in the gym pumping iron or running ultra marathons. They live in environments that constantly nudge them to get out and move around without even thinking about it. They grow gardens, they hike up the side of hills, they don't have any mechanical conveniences for house and yard work. 2, as we've discussed previously, a sense of purpose. In Okinawa, they call it Ikigai. The Nicoyans call it plan de vida. But for both, it essentially translates to why I wake up in the morning. And some researchers say that knowing your sense of purpose is worth up to 7 years of extra life expectancy. A third of the Power 9 principles, downshifting. Even people in the blue zones experience stress, and many of us know that stress leads to chronic inflammation, which is associated with every major age-related disease. But what the world's longest living people have that we don't are routines to shed that stress. Ikarians take a nap, Adventists pray, Okinawans take a few minutes each day to recognize their ancestors. 4, and this relates to diet, the 80% rule. Hara hachi bu, the Okinawan 2,500-year-old Confucian mantra said before meals, Hara hachi bu, reminds them to stop eating when their stomachs are 80% full. This 20% gap between not being hungry and feeling full could be the difference between losing weight or gaining weight. And people in the blue zones typically eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or early evening, and then they don't eat any more the rest of the day. Now, I've known for a long time that overeating taxes your organs. Still doesn't prevent me doing it from time to time. And I've also known that people who slightly undereat or fast occasionally tend to be in better health and live longer. I try to make it a practice not to eat after 5 o'clock. And if I'm lying in bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night and my stomach is rumbling slightly, that's kind of a good indicator to me that I'm going to sleep better knowing that I haven't overeaten over the course of the day. In respect to overeating, or what we eat, I should say, a 5th Power 9 principle, an emphasis on plants. Beans like fava beans, black beans, soy beans, and lentils are the cornerstone of most centenarian diets. Meat, mostly pork, is eaten on average only 5 times a month. And serving sizes are a lot less, typically 3 or 4 ounces, about the size of a deck of cards. Now, 6, people in all the blue zones, except the Adventists, drink alcohol moderately and regularly. Moderate drinkers outlive non-drinkers. How about that? The trick is to drink 1 or 2 glasses a day. And in Sardinia, it's a wine called the Canino wine. And drinking a glass of wine a day with friends and with a light meal, this has been found to be a healthy lifestyle for people in the blue zones. 7th principle, a sense of belonging. All but 5 of the 263 centenarians interviewed in Buettner's research belong to some faith-based community. It doesn't matter what the denomination is, what the religion is. Research shows that attending faith-based services 4 times a month will add 4 to 14 years of life expectancy. Principle number 8, putting your loved ones first. Successful centenarians in the blue zones put their families first. This means keeping aging parents and grandparents nearby or in the home. This lowers disease and mortality rates of children in the home too. And they commit to a life partner, which can add up to 3 years of life expectancy, and invest in their children with time and love. And of course, those children will be more likely to care for you when the time comes. And the ninth principle found in the blue zones, social relationships. The world's longest-lived people chose or were born into social circles that supported healthy behaviors. Okinawans created moe's, groups of 5 friends that commit to each other for life. Research from the Framingham studies shows that smoking, obesity, happiness, and even loneliness are contagious. So the social networks of long-lived people have favorably shaped their health behaviors. So those are Buettner and colleagues' 9 principles or lessons from the blue zones. But I want to chat for a minute about some other research done by Hector Garcia and Francesca Morales, who focused on the blue zone Japanese town of Ogimi in the northern part of the island of Okinawa in their book, Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. Now, according to the Japanese, everyone has an Ikigai, which is essentially a reason for being. Some people may have found their Ikigai, and others may spend a lifetime looking. But Garcia Morales say that Ikigai is hidden deep inside each of us, and finding it requires a patient search. According to those born in Okinawa, the island with the most centenarians in the world, Ikigai is the reason we get up in the morning. And as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to go into more detail on Ikigai, please go back to episode 29 of the Great Divorce podcast, where I discuss Ikigai in a little bit more depth. But for here, now I'll give you a brief overview. Essentially, your Ikigai is found where 4 things meet. Those 4 things are what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. It's usually expressed graphically as 4 circles, concentric circles or overlapping circles, and where all 4 of those things overlap in the center is your Ikigai. One mistake Americans make about the concept of Ikigai is the idea that it has to be something where you make a lot of money. Obviously, it depends on your financial situation and what your stage of life is. But if you have very few expenses, you might find your Ikigai is gardening. And maybe you're such an adept gardener that you can sell some of the fruits or vegetables that you grow. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. Similarly, if you're an Ikigai, or if your Ikigai is playing piano, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a concert pianist playing in front of sellout concert halls. In their book, Garcia and Morales focus on 2 key components of Ikigai, and those are flow and resilience. You may have heard of these psychological terms before. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi is known for his research into what he called the state of flow, which he described as the pleasure, delight, creativity, and process when we are completely immersed in life or in a specific task. As Csikszentmihalyi states in his book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, flow is the state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience itself is so enjoyable that people would do it even at great cost for the sheer sake of doing it. Concentrating on one thing at a time may be the single most important factor in achieving flow. And Garcia and Morales point to the importance of rituals that still permeate daily life and business practices in modern Japan. The main religions in Japan, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Shintoism, are all ones in which rituals are more important than absolute rules. And they argue that enjoying your daily rituals can be a tool to enter a state of flow. We shouldn't worry about the outcome. It will come naturally. Happiness is in the doing, not the result. And how many times have we heard this expressed in our culture as happiness is in the journey and not the destination? Garcia Morales argue that rituals are more important than goals. And once again, this rings very similar to the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, where he emphasizes habits over goals. The emphasis shouldn't be, as it so often is in Western culture, about achievement and success, which might be a nice byproduct. Rather, the emphasis should be on the happiness we can experience by spending more time in this state of flow. Now, Garcia Morales note that everyone with a clearly defined Ikigai has a common desire to pursue their passion no matter what. And this engenders strong levels of resilience, or even what has become known as anti-fragility. If a resilient person is able to maintain focus when subject to shocks and pressures and the inevitable brickbats that life throws against us, the anti-fragile person actually grows and gets stronger when harmed. And this is something along the lines of post-traumatic growth as researched by Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, another subject we went into some depth on the Great Divorce podcast way back in episode 4. Two Japanese concepts, wabi-sabi and ichigo-ichi-e, reflect Buddhist and Stoic principles that the present is all that exists and is the only thing that we can control. Instead of worrying about the past or the future, we should appreciate things as they are in the moment. Wabi-sabi is a Japanese concept that shows us the beauty of the fleeting, the beauty of the changeable, and the imperfect nature of the world around us. Consider, for example, why the Japanese place such value on cracked teacups. Morales and Garcia note that only things that are imperfect, incomplete, and ephemeral can truly be beautiful because only those things resemble the natural world. A complementary Japanese concept of ichigo-ichi-e can be translated as, this moment exists only now and won't come again. Ichigo-ichi-e teaches us to focus on the present and enjoy each moment that life brings us, which is why it's so important to find and pursue our Ikigai. Wabi-sabi teaches us to appreciate the beauty of imperfection as an opportunity for growth. Garcia and Morales conclude their discussion of the lessons they've learned from the long-lived residents of Ogimi in Okinawa with their 10 rules of Ikigai. These are quite similar in many respects to Buettner's 9 power principles of the Blue Zones, but you might find that the residents of Ogimi have contributed some unique aspects to these 10 rules of Ikigai. And they are: stay active, don't retire. Those who give up things that they love doing and do well lose their purpose in life. That's why it's so important to keep doing things of value, making progress, bringing beauty or utility to others, helping out, and shaping the world around you even after your official professional activity is ended. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be working 40 to 60 hours a week, but if you're really good at something, why quit? Second, take it slow. Being in a hurry is inversely proportional to a quality of life. Leave urgency behind, and life and time will take on new meaning. 3, we just discussed, don't fill your stomach. The residents of Ogimi use the 80% rule to stay healthier longer, eat just a little bit less than our hunger demands, and don't stuff themselves. 4, surround yourself with good friends. Friends are the best medicine. And it's interesting how similar this is to the principle of this principle is to the Harvard study of adult development, which found that ultimately relationships over health and money even were the key to happiness. Speaking of health, fitness. Just like Buettner's power principle of moving naturally, Garcia Morales note how the residents of Ogimi move through life if only to walk or garden. 6, a cheerful attitude. It's not only relaxing, it helps you make friends. A virtuous cycle. Reconnecting with nature. Human beings are made to be part of the natural world. We should return to it often to recharge our batteries. Number 8, gratitude. I dedicated podcast episode 45 to the importance of bringing a spirit of gratitude into our lives. If we spend just a moment every day giving thanks, we'll feel happier. Number 9, live in the moment. Stop regretting the past and fearing the future. Today is all we have. Make the most of it. And lastly, number 10, follow your Ikigai. Find that passion inside yourself, that unique talent that can give meaning to your days and drive you to share the best of yourself until your last breath. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion of the blue zones and Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. Here's wishing all of you emerging from mid to late life divorce a long, healthy, happy journey experiencing your Ikigai. And let's do what we can do to turn our towns into blue zones. Take care for now.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Great Divorce Podcast. To learn more or get in contact with your host, you can visit Andrew's website at transcendretirement.net. Also, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Information provided is educational only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Each situation is unique and should be discussed with your tax or legal advisor prior to implementation. Andrew Hatherley is not an attorney and does not provide legal advice. Information provided is financial in nature. Advisory services offered through Hatherley Capital Management, LLC. Divorce financial analysis services offered through Wiser Divorce Solutions, an affiliated company.